Avoiding your unfinished home projects because you're not sure where to start? Thumbtack knows homes, so you don't have to. Don't know the difference between matte paint finish and satin? Or what that clunking sound from your dryer is? With Thumbtack, you don't have to be a home pro. You just have to hire one. You can hire top-rated pros, see price estimates, and read reviews, all on the app. Download today.
You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, a true crime fan tries to prove her mother didn't kill her father. But how can she be sure? Because her mother was tied up in a locked closet during the murder. We'll review the podcast Hands Tied from iHeartPodcasts and BBC Studios. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband, and sometimes the love of my life. No, just kidding, all the time. Kevin Flynn. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Also with us, private investigator.
Are you just disappointed that I didn't bring like a bowl of strawberries and whipped cream to the studio?
I'm disappointed that we're not doing it in the jacuzzi later.
Your anniversary is coming up in a few months.
Yeah. That's very good that you remember that, Laura.
Yeah, that's true.
Speaking of, Laura Bricker's with us. She's a private investigator, certified pet detective, and cat lady. Welcome, Laura Bricker.
Well, hey, this is why I remember these important things, because my mind is like an elephant. I know when you all got married, the New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. Yes. And finally, our resident doubting Thomas, author of so many things, host of Rip Current, host of More Like Ancient Aliens, and the podcast, soon to be a motion picture, Strange Arrivals. It's Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. It's always nice to have you, Toby. So, Kevin.
Yes.
We are back to our twice weekly schedule.
It's true.
So this is a brand new episode.
Yeah.
But what's our brand new episode coming out on Monday?
So on Monday, we're going to talk about the series on Hulu. It's called The Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox. And it's brought to you by Amanda Knox.
Huh. Who's Amanda Knox? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, my goodness gracious. I'm glad that we don't do too much on Twitter anymore because they'll
come for us.
Oh my God.
There's a whole, for those who don't know, when Twitter was working properly, which it no longer is, it was also much easier to do these disinformation campaigns. And literally any time that there was a hint that you were talking about Amanda Knox, it was just like the Amber Heard situation. Throngs of people, a lot of them imaginary, would come at you and tell you what a whore she is and how guilty she is and what a psychopath she is. It's wild. It's one of those cases that talking about it publicly always stirs something up, right?
Well, it's like Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson and Amanda Knox, both ones come for you on the Twitter.
Oh, totally. Scott Peterson, another case we don't talk about on the show. It's just a whole thing. All right, so Kevin, you want to do a quickie plug for this thing you got going on, or you want to ask people to give you money? Not you, but through you?
Yeah, I just want to take a second to tell everybody that, again, this year I'm going to be doing the Walk a Mile in Their Shoes. It's a benefit for the Thrive Survivor Support Center here. It offers emergency services for people experiencing domestic and intimate partner violence. Every year I've been doing this now, and I put on a pair of high heel shoes, and I do the walkathon. And
that's fun.
Well, okay, it's a mile. Well,
it's a mile, in quotes.
It's a mile. That's not important, Rebecca. Those aren't the important details. The important detail is that everybody out there, especially those in Crime Writers On Nation, have always been very generous in supporting this effort. The walkathon is next Wednesday. So if you're looking for a way to support and you can't find us on the socials, look at us in the show notes in the podcast or go to crimewriterson.com. There's a link there that'll take you to the event page. The past 2 years, I've been the #1 fundraiser.
Because of you.
Thanks to the folks at Crime Writers On and others. And so I'm really asking you to help out. You know, the services that Thrive provides are very important. Not only emergency services for people in crisis fleeing a bad situation, but they do things that you probably wouldn't think are necessary, but like accompanying people to court dates and getting them to the hospital, finding emergency housing for them and other sorts of financial resources. Because when you experience that kind of stuff, it's not just a one-day event, right?
Of course.
And so these are the services that they've been able to provide. Every year you guys have been super generous, and if you can help us out, I would really appreciate it. So in the show notes or over at crimewriterson.com, thanks in advance.
All right, Kevin, thank you so much for that plug, and I hope you become the #1 fundraiser again. I really, really do.
I shall.
Yeah. All right, should we talk about the podcast we're talking about?
Let's do that.
All right, leading off.
And so I'm like, what happened? And he can't even talk. And I get so frustrated because he's taking too long and it feels like it's been an eternity. And I'm like, just tell me what the fuck happened.
True crime fan Lizz Melgar Rose found herself in the middle of her own case. In 2012, her father, Jim, was murdered in his Texas home while her mother, Sandy, was tied up and left in a closet wedged shut by a chair. But Sandy Melgar's inability to recall details of the home invasion made police suspicious.
Well, isn't it ironic that you black out at the exact time when he's getting stabbed and bludgeoned?
I don't have an answer for you.
Multiple times like that. Dying, screaming for help.
Oh my gosh.
Liz claimed investigators never pursued other leads, including evidence of a burglary, choosing instead to believe Sandy tied her own hands behind her back and staged the crime scene. Even with no motive or evidence tying her to the brutal stabbing, prosecutors charged her with murder.
We believe that we're going to be able to prove this case to you beyond a reasonable doubt. Don't know that I have motive here, but there's no other way any other thing could have happened other than she just brutally murdered her husband.
iHeartPodcasts and BBC Studios present Hands Tied. Host Maggie Robinson Katz explores the theory that a middle-aged woman with epilepsy and arthritis could stab her husband 30 times, stay spotless, and then bind herself in a closet locked from the outside. The podcast also follows Liz's fight to prove her mother's innocence. Spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about plot points from Hands Tied. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. So, Toby, there's an opening scene here, right? With an ideal family in an ideal setting. How do you think that works to just be the opening scene of this story?
I did not know where it was going, and then I didn't know why they'd done it after I did see where it was going. I mean, they kind of describe a sort of Norman Rockwell style, like, ideal Christmas scene, as if people don't understand what that is.
Inside, you're warm, happy. Maybe there's a fire lit in the corner. You're surrounded by people you love, clinking glasses and good cheer. Oh, don't look. Aunt Martha maybe had a bit too much to drink, but you know what? It's Christmas.
And it's basically, to set it up and then contrast it with, but what if you got a call that said that your dad was killed? Mm-hmm. And it's just weird. Like, it takes a while. Like, it's not a brief description. Like, they really go through
Foley.
it.
There's fire crackling sounds and stuff.
Yeah, they're really leaning into it. It was kind of like, why are you spending this much time on this? Why don't we just get into the story? Or isn't there something more interesting than reminding us of what the myth of Christmas looks like?
Yeah. So, Laura, we do have the daughter here, though, Liz, who I find to be incredibly likable. Do you think she's a good framing device through which to tell the story? Because they do interview her quite a bit, and she obviously is central here.
Right. So you hear going in, like, Liz, she has this interest in true crime, and you're like, oh, great, here we go. Because you're thinking, like, this is going to be the setup. But she wasn't what I expected when I heard that sentence. Because a lot of times you hear that sentence and you hear that somebody's into true crime and you're like, oh, here we go. This is like the amateur sleuth. I think she brings the human element to this.
At that moment, I remember thinking, you're sitting in this bathtub, right? With the person that you think you're spending the rest of your life with. You're talking about what you're about to do now that he's retired, your plans, all this stuff. And then he gets up to go let the dogs in, and the next thing you wake up and your whole life has been turned upside down.
She brings the context of what her parents' relationship was like, what it was like watching as this unfolded, watching her mother, who's got all these medical issues, and nobody seems to give a shit about that. They're just like, oh yeah, no, epilepsy, lupus, no, whatever. Like, we're just going to question her until she like freaking passes out or almost, like is not well. So I think Liz's perspective as the daughter, but also somebody that is driving the story, it brings that extra level of investment as a listener in listening to this in the way that you're like, this is a bunch of bullshit, the way they treated her mother. Bringing her back to that freaking house when it was covered in blood and they had literally just taken her husband's body out. Like, who thought that was a good idea?
Yeah.
The good thing about Liz's part in this is that she was into true crime stuff, but that didn't mean that she was going to like start knocking on doors and stuff. But it did mean she could see what was going on and be like, yeah, that doesn't seem quite right to me.
Right.
And I think that is like the right kind of deployment of that interest rather than sort of being more actively involved.
You know, I really liked the other family members that were in this too, because we had the cousin, the one who was there when he was found and when she was found. Honestly, her scene setting is, I mean, I just want to say I like this podcast, but some of the writing is really clunky and her scene setting is so much better. And that's what sort of what pointed out to me. She describes this scene where basically her aunt and uncle are like the richer members of the family, and they're driving up in their car with 6 people in it, including a baby, and they're trying to get out, and like she doesn't want the neighbors to see them because she's embarrassed about how they're like, you know, rolling up on this house. Like, it's great scene setting.
Every single shade in the house is drawn.
My dad started calling out, Sandy, Jim, we're here. And that's when we started hearing what I would describe like mumbling noises. We all stopped and we were like, wait, what was that?
And she also talks later about how if her aunt's guilty, like if I see evidence she's guilty, then she's guilty, right? Like they just do a really good job adding flavor and grounding the story, because very often we hear these stories and they're just told to us and it's hard to, for lack of a better word, it's hard to really be invested or care. In hearing from the family directly, I think really helps with that here. Kevin, I just mentioned sometimes the writing being a little clunky. What did you think about the writing in this podcast?
Well, I thought those actually had some nice conversational writing in places, kind of breezy at times. She definitely tried to have a comfort level with the audience. I'm not, sure it was appropriate at every time, the tone.
My dad was filled with stories from the time he turned down hanging out with Paul McCartney, which was a major regret, to producing a radio program with John Candy. And to answer the question that may have popped into your head, yes, I did grow up rich.
And I should say that I'm not quite sure how deep she should have gone into her own father's story. I think it was good to sort of explain that she has an affinity for Liz's story. And she says, well, they're not the same. And you're right. They really aren't on point.
Let me tell you about it anyway.
And yeah, to come back and sort of play tape of that, I was like, I thought that was unnecessary because I think she already sort of, established her bona fides as somebody that could tell the story. I thought she did, as far as the narration and the writing, whoever took care of that, I thought that she wrote very well for her own voice and style, which kept this from being very dry. So I would give her points on that. I don't know about doubling down on, Vaughn Dyer.
It's the elephant in the room. Talk about that.
Vaughn Dyer.
She says Vaughn Dyer, and then she says, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong.
The next episode, I'm sure someone sent an email saying, I know you didn't go to law school, but you do have television, right? You've seen that before.
But you could also just retract it, not say it in the second episode. Or just Google how it's pronounced.
All right. We're probably saying Sandy Melgar's name wrong, too. But,
Melgar.
Melgar?
I think so.
Yeah, you don't know?
I don't know.
Double down on it next week, too.
Doubling down. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Yeah. But it's also not a common legal term that we hear every time someone goes to court. So, yeah, I'll just say that moments like that, which are fixable, really stand out to me. And they stand out to me because, and I hate to say it because it makes me sound like persnickety, which I'm generally not. But this
is our job.
When I find out that even in this podcast, which is very loose and conversational, when I realize I pronounced something horribly wrong, I'm really embarrassed by it. And I usually come down to the studio and retract that part and cut it in and then re-upload the audio. I have a couple that I've left in from many, many years ago. So don't at me on, like not being able to pronounce Mahershala Ali's name when literally nobody knew who he was. That's very, very fixable. And you have to understand, I think, how distracting that is. It's very distracting to people who understand the process or who have listened to other legal podcasts. And I don't want to say it's discrediting, but for a minute it kind of is. So I would just make an effort to, next time something like that happens, not do it. Fix it. So Laura, let's talk about the cops.
Yes.
Because this is another case where they're pretty sure they knew what happened, but they couldn't figure out how it happened until the trial, after they've spent weeks and weeks and weeks in the office trying to twist themselves into pretzels, coming up with a theory of how this woman could have tied herself up and then moved a chair outside the door of the room she was locked in, wedged it under the doorknob to lock herself into the room.
Do you think they went to a magician and said, how do you do this thing with this rope?
You do it with a rug to pull the chair. And then but that wasn't even how the freaking rope was tied. So, Laura, what did you think about these cops?
As I was listening to this podcast, I started just getting so irritated because, first of all, they don't ever really talk about a motive, but they talk about that she did this. And you're like, okay, so this woman who, has lupus, she has epilepsy, she's had 2 hip replacements, she has rheumatoid arthritis, and she's fucking tied up to the point that whoever relative it was that came to help her get out could not untie it without cutting this off of her hands. And she's locked in a closet. But no, she did this. But wait, we don't know why she did this because everybody says they're a happy couple. But, he had a life insurance policy. So that must have been it. I'm like, this is like, no, like even like, no. I don't know about you guys, but I'm listening to this and it was, as they're leading up to, her getting charged and her going to trial and you're hearing all this, you're like, they've never really talked about a motive for this. I don't really understand how any of this makes sense. She's clearly traumatized by what happened. She was locked in a closet. By the way, also her medication was missing. Also, other stuff was missing. Also, there's a weird backpack in the garage that isn't supposed to be anybody's. Like, there are
with a Nintendo PlayStation in it.
But I felt like this was like one of those cases where you hear about cops that have like tunnel vision and they're like, hey, Kevin got killed. It must be Rebecca.
Right.
Okay, we're not going to look at Toby. We're not going to look at Laura. We're not going to look at Briscoe. We're not going to look at Stuart. We are looking at Rebecca. And that is it. And we don't care what anybody else says because even though Rebecca's leg was broken and she couldn't have walked down the stairs, she did it.
But she had just had jacuzzi sex.
I know.
So that's not even on your back. That's athletic.
Good for them. Having sex in a jacuzzi is not like easy. I was like, good for them.
They've been married 35 years and they're still doing it with drinks in the jacuzzi.
I was like, good for them. So yeah, I just think the police in this really pissed me off because I was like, the lead up of how inept this investigation was so long. And it wasn't until the very end of this podcast that we start to hear the other side of this, of like what's happening now and who's helping this. But the lead up, I'm like, how did nobody think that this was like wrong? How did everybody think this was okay? Like, how did people even get on this fucking bandwagon? Right?
Well, the bandwagon to get on is on Patreon. Yes. Where you can join us there.
Good one, Kevin.
At patreon.com/partners in crime media. It's a great way to support this podcast. If you go there, you can get exclusive podcasts like the Crime Writers on After Show, Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast, our advice podcast, Married with Podcast, Rebecca Lavoie's ongoing look at the Karen Reed case as we shift into the civil trial version. That's called the Readathon.
Double civil trial.
And then Laura Bricker's Leave It to Bricker podcast. Also, another way to support us is to join us at our Amazon storefront.
Buy stuff.
Yeah, you go to Amazon, but don't go straight to Amazon. Go to Amazon.com/shop/crime writers on, and there you can see some of our favorite things. Rebecca, can you tell us a little bit about what this week's Amazon recommendations are?
Well, Kevin, it's that time of year again.
Is it decorative?
Dog costume time.
Oh, dog costume time.
And yes,
okay.
it also is decorative gourd season, motherfuckers. But I love looking at the dog costumes on Amazon. And I don't 100% always buy one. You're traditionally the dog costume buyer. But this is the one I'm looking at right now. Look at this corgi that looks like a cowboy riding a horse on this back.
I love that. Our dogs do not like the hats.
No.
And
that's to be hatless. Look at this one, a caveman riding.
Oh, caveman's good. Oh, that's even better.
Isn't that cute?
That's a great one. That's
a
really
good
good one.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. Now, Toby, can you tell us what your listener-inspired Toby Ball's deep cut recommendations are?
Sure. I'll start off with the Coco Plosius 26 by 26 pillow covers, Boho Euro Sham set of 2 decorative throw pillow, covers cotton large square pillowcase for a couch bed, sage green.
Wow.
Great pick.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. And then this is probably one of Rebecca's purchases. Gentle Creatures dog sunscreen.
No.
SPF 30 plus with skin moisturizing vitamin E and olive oil. No zinc oxide. Safe for all dogs and cats.
What?
Dog beach accessory. The idea of trying to put sunscreen on one of my cats is almost just beyond belief. But
goodness.
Good luck.
You know, we have friends that have 2 of those weird bald cats. They could probably use some sunscreen, right, Kevin?
Yeah. Hey, so other ways you can support us, you can follow us. Make sure you subscribe and like our podcast, but follow us on Instagram, on YouTube,
Tell
on TikTok.
other people about the podcast.
The best way is to tell other people about it. The word of mouth. That costs you nothing, but it's so valuable to us. Even if you told them before, you're like, I told them 10 years ago when you started this podcast. Well, tell them again. Tell them you continue to listen. Tell them there's a great variety of things that we talk about and that it's always fun even when we're pitching the business section.
All right. So, Kevin, before we end this business section, do we have any Patreon patron saints of the week this week?
Our Patreon patron saints are Lexi Fowler and Heather DeAnda. Bless you.
Bless you guys. Thank you so much for supporting us on Patreon. And if you support us on Patreon, you too could someday be a Patreon patron saint. You don't win anything except our praise and love on the podcast. And who doesn't like hearing their own name on a podcast, right, Kevin?
Who doesn't want to be beautified?
Let's go ahead and end this business section now. I'm going to fade that music out. So, Toby, the cops think that, this old woman with all these health problems.
She's as old as you are.
Hush now.
I'm just saying.
I'm a woman of a certain age. Let's be real.
Guess what? You're the same age.
They were married 35 years. They didn't get married when she was 16.
You know what this is like? This is like when you find out how old the Golden Girls were when they filmed that show.
Yeah.
She was 52 when this happened.
So they were married 35 years. Wow, good for them. Anyway, so this woman, this middle-aged woman.
Spring chicken.
This menopausal woman, they are saying, and she had all these health issues, and they're saying that she bound herself in a closet. I want to stress it again. Closed the door on herself and wedged a chair under the door. What do you think about these cops, Toby?
Well, women are tricky, so they have to really...
Don't trust them.
Yeah, you got to keep your eyes wide open. Yeah, they clearly have blinders on. I don't like these police interrogations. I feel like these people get these techniques, but they don't really understand them or like when it's appropriate to use them or things like that. So it was kind of cringy. Like the whole thing was just like, do you guys realize how stupid you're being? And like, are you under the impression that nobody's ever going to find out about this? Because this is the only way I can imagine like going forward with the way you're talking about questioning her and talking about these things. It just seemed kind of absurd on its face. And the fact that, again, it's like, what are you trying to accomplish here? But she got convicted, so I guess they accomplished what they wanted to do, which was get her in jail. But again, it seems crazy that anybody could do this, much less somebody who suffered from some physical disabilities. It's strange.
So, Kevin, the cops aren't the only dipshits in this story, right? We hear from a former juror in the trial. And I, by the way, commend anybody who's a juror in a case who convicted somebody and comes on a podcast about a potential wrongful conviction. So good for you for doing your civic duty. Good for you for being a juror and good for you for being interviewed about it. But the defendant does not have to prove their innocence in court. Kevin, thoughts?
Yeah, dipshit, I think is
they were your
a graceful way. Yes. I'm putting it.
They failed to tell me or make me believe she didn't do it. So I'm like, you're not offering me any. Oh, yeah, there was somebody that came in the house. Well, prove it. Where's your proof? Do you have any video that shows somebody going to the house? Any footprints? Any fingerprints?
Yeah, she didn't prove her innocence. And not only that, but we were able to convince the other 7 people to come over to our side. But I will say, somewhat in his defense, that a lot of true crime fans sort of approach stories the same way.
Yes.
Right? You're like, even in the wrongful conviction ones, and there are ones here that we've had, I'm thinking of a couple of podcasts where they're trying to make the case that this is a wrongful conviction, and it seems pretty thin, in part because we don't really have a good alternative story, right? And so that sort of natural tendency to want to be convinced of something, that aside, in a court of law, It's certainly a misrepresentation of the charge that the judge gave those jurors. It's a misrepresentation of the Constitution and basically, I don't know, any fucking television show you ever watched.
My understanding was that it was the prosecutor, and then the defense attorney didn't do that explanation of how reasonable doubt works.
Oh, you're thinking of the other trial we just talked about.
So the judge gives instructions, right?
Yeah.
But also in a closing argument, it is so common. It's so common that it's like just basically template now. A defense attorney explains to the jury what reasonable doubt is and explains, and usually this is in the judge's instructions too, says there's no burden on the defendant. They don't have to prove their innocence. All you have to do is if you believe something's reasonably untrue in the prosecution's case, that's reasonable doubt.
Yeah, but I mean, to be clear here, the only person in the court that can tell the jurors what the law is the judge.
Right.
The defense attorneys,
But they do it in
can't
closing
say.
arguments all the time.
No, well, they can say it, but they can't. I think the way that you've just presented it is they will assert this is what the law is. But as far as the idea of like what reasonable doubt ought to be, yeah, I mean, a lot of people just walk in already and they're just, well, that person got arrested, so they must have done it. And my duty here is to sit through this trial and then nod a lot and then, yeah, she did it.
That's how Toby was in the timber taking
That's
trial.
absolutely. Toby's been on several juries.
Yep.
I just got called for jury duty, guys. I'm going in a couple weeks. I'm so excited.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Hooray. Yeah, I'm suing my neighbor. Anyway, we're all.
I talked about that in Patreon, but I didn't say what was going on. I just said we might talk about it someday. And
yeah, I might make my own podcast from all the from all the court recordings.
Yes.
It'll be something. But anyway, I was just saying that this juror seems like he was doing his civic duty, and you couldn't know that at the time. But when you come out and you realize, his rationale, if he's still remembering correctly what happened, this was 2008 was this crime.
Yeah.
So in any event, maybe he was just being inartful with his words, expressing himself. But no, you shouldn't send someone to jail for the rest of their life just because you think they didn't prove they were. I mean, other than the fact that she tied her own hands up, that could have happened. And, she could have also, bound herself.
She could have had sex with herself in that jacuzzi.
She could have. She could have, does need a reason to stab the guy in the neck.
But the fact that he bought that ridiculous story, Kevin, I was like,
I
what?
know.
No.
Just
no. No.
That's Laura's new trademark.
No. I can't even tie my shoes sometimes. And this lady tied herself up in a closet and shut the door and locked it with a chair
this
on
isn't
the other
like
side.
Alex Murdaugh pretending that he got shot and it's going to die. So, Toby, I want to explore something with you because something really stuck out to me in the trial scenes. I personally am not a person who thinks that you have to prove a motive or even know a motive to prove that somebody committed a murder, because most murders, frankly, are really fucking stupid. And it's like something happened, it was a mistake, or it was something that got out of hand and whatever. And the motive is, oh shit, something really stupid happened. The motive doesn't have to be, well, I have this long-term plan to kill you because of your life insurance. But the prosecution kept pointing to the fact that there was no motive and saying, we don't know why this happened. We just know she did it. What do you think of this whole, the fact that they kept pointing to this motive thing over and over and over again?
I mean, it's weird because you don't need a motive for a conviction.
It's not evidence.
Right. It just seemed like there was a lot of talk about motive, and it seemed like it would have been easy to say, look, motive is really helpful in getting a conviction because it makes it easier to understand why it happened, and thus easier to say, well, yeah, they probably did it, but it's not necessary, right? And it just seemed like a pretty simple distinction to make, but which they were unable to make in was it 5 or 6 minutes of talking about motive, and you don't need a motive, and we don't have a motive, and where's the motive, and all this stuff. And it's well, it seems like kind of a side issue, right? It does. It's not really who gives a fuck, It'd be a little bit easier to get a conviction probably if you could say they did it because of this. And it seems like they kind of speculate a little bit about it, but there were parts in this, sort of globally, I didn't really experience this as being a padded podcast, But then you go back and you're like, well, what were the beats of the story? And there's just really not that many beats, right? So there's a lot of time which is spent, and I think Rebecca was talking about this earlier, where you kind of meet these people and you get a chance to like kind of get a sense of who they are, and then they'll talk a little bit about how they know Jaime and how he influenced their life or whatever. And that's there's just a fair amount of it, stuff like that. And it's not boring, and some of it's kind of interesting, but it is kind of funny. At the end, you're like, okay, well, wait, what just happened? Like, it's just like, there's a few things that happen, and then it's sort of filled in by having this sort of, for the most part, I think, pretty interesting, pretty informative stuff about sort of the people who are kind of involved on the periphery. But this is a situation where I was like, I don't know if we need to go quite as much into this.
You didn't feel like you got a lot out of the different Tex-Mex cuisines that are available in Houston?
I took notes on that part.
You did? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, for restaurant recommendations. So, Kevin, one of the people in the credits on this show, I just want to call her out because I really like her, is Ashley Fonz. You remember that name?
No.
She's the host of season 2 of Suspect. If it's the same Ashley Fonz, it could be a completely different person. And Suspect is, especially season 1, is notable for a thing that in one of your notes you say is absent from this podcast, which is a deep exploration of evidence, actual concrete evidence around the crime. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, let me explain what I mean. I think there was a couple of pieces of evidence that left me wondering about certain things about them. They weren't explored, I think, as thoroughly as they should have been. One of the things that never was sort of explained to me was more about the rope. That both Jim was bound and that Sandy's hands and feet were bound. And
it was trick rope, Kevin. It was trick rope that you could tie yourself up with.
Well, it wasn't rope at all. Right. And I ended up getting this later as I'm doing some of the research in preparation for the podcast.
Kevin got the trial transcripts.
I ended up seeing, one of the TV stations has 89 crime scene photos.
Yeah.
And so as far as like what she was tied with, as far as actual rope, that apparently there was some red rope found near Jim. His feet were bound with the telephone cord. Which was something to be in the house, right? So if someone brings rope with them, then like, okay, that's very telling as opposed to maybe using something that was there. She was tied with scarves or neckties or things like this. But I was left with the impression throughout that there was some kind of rope because they keep referring to it like that. And I think that's a distinction that would have made things much more clear, especially when you're trying to visualize their demonstration about how she tied herself up and also the murder weapon. We find out, I went through and I'm like, okay, let me just make sure that I heard this correctly. And I'll just say I went through the transcript. I just did search for the word knife. And I think I got to episode 5 before that word came up. I mean, we knew stabbing, but as far as where is this murder weapon? And I was left with the impression up until the last episode that the knife disappeared and that it wasn't found. And I'm thinking, that's very interesting. They're saying that she tied herself up, she did this, and she got rid of the murder weapon. And that was not thoroughly explained to us. And it wasn't until they start talking about how they are retesting the knife for DNA and that it was found in the jacuzzi. Like, this is where it's been.
It's kind of a big deal.
It's a big deal where it is. It's a big deal that they tested it back then and didn't come up with anything because it certainly sets up the big deal, later on when they're going to do new testing. But those were a couple of things that if you're holding them back for, narrative purposes, like we always talk about, you got the cards and you're making a conscious decision to turn one over for a surprise or whatever. This just felt like it was insufficiently described, and it certainly left me with different impressions about what was important and what could be brought up at trial. And but this is a thing that exonerates her, right? And no, that's not what that is at all. The whole thing about how she was bound, they just mentioned cord, and I'm like, what kind of cord?
It was inconsistent. It
was very inconsistent. So I would just say it's not like I'm deducting points because you failed to put this in your essay kind of thing. Saying that having done that distorted my impression of what this case was about.
Right.
And that could have been made more clear to me so that I could understand.
That's what I was talking about when I talked about the difference between hearing the cousin talk about rolling up on the scene and hearing the writing. That's the contrast, because like it was so detailed and I could see it in my head, like all these people and, the running through the house. I could see it. And then that urgency was absent when it came to details about the actual crime, which are when you're trying to exonerate somebody and you want the listener to buy into that exoneration, the details actually are important.
Yeah, you've inadvertently made a red herring there, and that's a knock on it.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out the podcast Hands Tied? Laura Bricker, thumbs up or thumbs down for this podcast?
So I'm going to go mild thumbs up for this podcast. This is a case that really enraged me listening to it because I felt like there was issues right from the start where I was like, this doesn't feel like this conviction was obtained in a way that felt fair. And my kind of gripe with this podcast is that there's some post-conviction relief going on in this case right now, and that did not come up until the end. And I feel like the issues, without giving away spoilers, that are raised in that post-conviction relief could have been put forward in a way that was a little bit more deliberate throughout the podcast, and the podcast itself seemed more of a retelling of the case through, family members and, folks that were involved. And like, this is a case that has gotten a lot of attention. Like, you look it up, it's on the Texas Innocence Project's page. This is a case that people know about. So I wanted to hear more about the breakdown on what the issues were, how they were going to fight them, what the other information was. That being said, I was definitely enraged listening to this, and the way that it was told still kept me listening. I just wanted a little bit more of a legal context. And I think that's why I am a mild thumbs up instead of a full thumbs up.
Toby Ball, thumbs up or thumbs down for Hands Tied?
This felt very conventional to me. I think the case and the way it's set up and stuff just feels like a whole bunch of other podcasts we've listened to. I mean, that's not necessarily bad because I think they do a good enough job with it. I mean, I think there's a little bit of clunky writing where it's trying to be sort of conversational and familiar, but at the same time, the host is reading off a script. So it's just a little weird. It just seemed like a lot of other things. And, the case is pretty interesting. The people who they interview around the case, I think, are more interesting than average that you get as people who are sort of adjacent to a crime like this. So I'm kind of a mild thumbs up. I mean, there's nothing super wrong with it. It just doesn't, again, it just feels like something that we've heard a bunch of times. And it's really the sort of details are different.
Kevin Flynn.
Yeah, I'm also a mild thumbs up on this. Yeah, like you said, it's conventional. It's fine. I did like some of the writing. I just think that probably what kind of held this back is I think that they didn't quite anticipate what questions the listeners would have and sort of like where we would be as they're taking us along this journey, because I ended up being a little bit distracted about things that weren't being told, but not in a way that is like for a big reveal later. Just stuff that seems to be overlooked and, not well handled. But it's a super interesting case, and there's a lot of WTF to this. It's one of the reasons why this case has been covered by other podcasts like Bob Ruff and some other folks, because it just doesn't seem believable, the prosecution's theory of the crime. It seems quite implausible. And yet, this is the way our justice system works. So it was good. The case is just really super interesting. I think they could have leaned a little more into the WTF of it all. The can you believe this? Dumb juror, horrible prosecutor, that kind of thing. But overall, it's going to go a mild thumbs up.
Yeah, me too. Mild thumbs up. Context of me listening to this was actually important, and it's what led to my... Actually, I'm just going to go thumbs up, and here's why. I was stacking wood when I was listening to this. I spent, 3 or 4 hours bringing wood from the giant pile outside where it was delivered into our garage where we have a big wood rack. And this is a good podcast to listen to while you're doing something else. I was like, okay, let me listen to the next one. Okay, let me listen to the next one. Until the last 2 episodes, where I started to feel like this suffered from this has to be 8 episode syndrome. It really slows down, in my opinion, in the last 2 episodes, and that's where a lot of the meaty stuff is. So this could have been tighter. That being said, I didn't feel the need to be like, I got to stop this and come back to it later while I was also stacking wood. It got me through that, and I was relatively entertained. The case is freaking fascinating. And they have most of the right people to talk about it. It sounds pretty good most of the time. And there are a couple of distracting moments, which we talked about in our regular review. Oh, mild. I got to go mild. I'm just waffling back again. I'm listening to myself talk. Mild thumbs up, Kevin. Mild. But yeah, so I guess I'm a mild thumbs up.
Scratching this on my clipboard for this third time.
I guess I'm a mild thumbs up, but it's not bad. And if you like true crime podcasts that are kind of mid and keep you entertained, this is a good one for that. So mild thumbs up for me. All right, that's going to do it for us. But before we go, Laura Bricker, do we have a cat of the week this week?
I do have some listener submitted cats of the week, but this one I found last week and I was like, I have to absolutely put this as my cat of the week this week. Emotional support alligator is no longer welcome at Pennsylvania Walmart.
I saw that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wesley Silva, age 60, says he's never had anything but encouraging feedback when he's out and about with Jen Soshi, which is his emotional support alligator. So he's a Western Pennsylvania man, and he took his alligator shopping around the local Walmart. He's never had a problem, but the recent trip, they got a do not return, cease and desist. His 5-foot-long, 32-pound reptile.
Oh, he got big. I remember when this thing was a baby and he was carrying it around.
Jin Sioshi made the local news after a trip to the Walmart where he pushed the alligator around in a shopping cart as she was wearing a dress. He says they've been going to Walmart for 3.5 years. Normally the reaction is, hey, that's cool. Hey, you have a pet alligator. However, Walmart said the safety of our customers and associates is our highest priority. We welcome service animals, but it is unacceptable to expose members of the public to potential danger.
Yeah, no shit. I think that's a good call.
This man got the alligator from a neighbor. Couldn't care for it anymore. Now, the alligator spends much of her days in a pool outside and nights in a bathtub of water.
Yeah.
Before the alligator, this guy already had a lot of reptiles. I don't want to hear about the reptiles because snakes freak me the fuck out. Snakes, geckos, Komodo dragon, and a second alligator. Oh, wait, he also has a dog.
With 3 legs, mysteriously.
He is also a pastor at a Baptist church. And he stopped short of calling this a holy act. He says, quote, in the Bible, God talks about us having dominion over animals, and I developed an affinity for the reptiles. I found them very soothing.
I'll say, Laura, I followed this guy a long time ago. I remember when the story first came out about this guy having and I saw the pictures, and the alligator used to be a baby, and he used to carry it around, and people would pet it and stuff. But even then, I was like, this is a fucking terrible idea. That monkey ripped that lady's face off. What do you think this alligator is going to do?
This alligator, it's like when you see the pictures of the people that like put their like head in between the alligator's jaws.
It's just a matter of time. They're harmless. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
It's an extended release capsule of tragedy.
I'm just saying, the Epping Walmart here, which is close to me, has had some exciting moments, as Kevin knows. From the Sheila LaBar case. My friend Jen was in that Epping Walmart when that unfolded and was like, something's amiss. But I'm going to say, if I saw an alligator, I would be pretty excited. But I would also run the other way.
I would like take a picture of it from far away and be like, that guy has a fucking alligator, Kevin. Can you believe how nutty that is?
This is like crime of the week. Toby, what do you think should happen to the emotional support alligator?
Well, I think you don't put a fucking alligator in a dress. To begin with, that's fucking ridiculous. Second, like Komodo dragons, like those things are huge. I think they're one of the few land species that actively hunt people.
Yes, and they're poisonous to touch.
This guy needs to be institutionalized or something. Like, it's fucking crazy. Do you remember when they found a gaboon viper like next to a playground in Maine when it was like 40 degrees out and the thing just like its body temperature dropped and it died? But it's like those things are among the most venomous things on earth. And it's like some dude just had it in his house and then like allowed it to escape and like travel far enough to get near a playground. And then like the idea that you can be emotionally supported by a reptile is just bizarre. Like reptiles are not known for like strong emotional attachments.
Cold-blooded. Yeah. Hey, there are service animals that go through and do great work with people. There are emotional support animals that get some sort of training and bring benefit. but you're basically just saying nothing's a pet anymore.
Yeah.
Right? It's poor judgment saying, hey, you have 50 other reptiles. Why don't you bring the one that isn't a snapping alligator?
Yes. Yeah.
It just...
For some people, and I don't want to in any way stigmatize people with anxiety and other issues that require these, because there are some legitimate cases of this, of course. A lot of people... I could call my dogs emotional support dogs because they make me feel better. I was in a bad mood when we started this podcast. The dogs came in and I'm in a great mood. That's not emotional support.
You can't take them to church, though.
That's just, I like animals and I wish they were with me all the time. That's all that is.
Yeah. When people go through the metal detector at the fucking airport with their pooch in a bag, it's like, come on, man.
Well, that's allowed. You can bring pooch on a plane.
Okay, yeah, I'll take it back.
Not into a restaurant.
No, but your emotional support llama can go fuck right off, all right?
With that, where can we find y'all on social media?
Yeah, Laura, where can you be found?
You can find me at Laura Bricker on Blue Sky and Instagram at Don't Send Me Any Snakes.
What about you, Toby? How can people continue this argument with you?
There's nothing I don't want to hear about anything that we talked about on this podcast.
All right.
From anybody.
It's at Toby Ball NH on Blue Sky, by the way. What about you, Kevin?
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn, and the P is for pets are cool.
I'm at Reb Lavoie, and I am the biggest dog lover in the world. And yes, a lot of those dogs walking around are just your pets that you want to have with you all the time.
It's fine if they're just your pets.
It's fine.
Don't need to be anything else. They're wonderful the way they are.
And you can say, I just like taking with me everywhere.
And you can take them to Lowe's if you want to go get some, spackle. Anyway, I'm
at Reb Lavoie on all the platforms. We are at Crime Writers on all the platforms. Join us on Patreon. Help us continue making this show, because if we don't fund the show, we literally can't make it. Patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. Our theme song is by Tyler Gibbons, and our editor is the wonderful Liv Burdett, who does not have an emotional support dog.
Yet.
The EP of this show is Kevin.
Me.
And this show was recorded in Studio C, the closet in our New Hampshire basement, where we also get nasty in the jacuzzi after margaritas at our favorite Mexican restaurant.
Tacos make me horny.
On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
You can use the link to support me. Every year, the past 2 years, I've been the number one. Okay, stop saying that.
Just say it.
It's going to be in the show notes.
Okay.
I'm trying to record my thing.
Okay, go.
You're horrible. You're fucking ruining everything.
Okay, so best practice.
I walk a mile in my shoes. All right. Where was I?
You could put all this stuff in the show notes, Kevin.
Yes.
Fuck off, Toby Ball. Okay. Where was I? Okay.
Partners in Crime Media.